Welcome back to the 2-Minute Warning. Today I'm looking at the Cincinnati Bengals and what free agents they should be targeting in this 2021 NFL offseason to help out their franchise quarterback, Joe Burrow. But before getting into that topic, question for those of you viewing, what were the 2 years that the Cincinnati Bengals won the AFC Championship? Just a hint, it was not in the 2000s, back in the 1900s, I guess I have to say, to not give it away completely. But again, what were the 2 years the Cincinnati Bengals won the AFC Championship? If you know it, comment it down below. If you do not, I will reveal the answer at the end, so make sure you stay tuned. But looking at the Cincinnati Bengals, they have a lot of holes on that team that need to be filling, and I think this offseason is a big time for them to do it. Don't think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to make the playoffs because of the amount of gaps and holes they have on that roster, but I do think Joe Burrow is a franchise guy that can take them there eventually in the future. But who they need to target this year is definitely going to be surrounding Joe Burrow with protection. Looking at the top linemen in this NFL free agency offseason is, of course, Brandon Scherff, Joe Thuney, both offensive guards, and, of course, the top left tackle is Trent Williams from the 49ers. A lot of those guys are due for big money. However, the Bengals do have a solid amount of cap room to make a big signing. And a lot of you might say, well, they can just address offensive line in the draft. They have the 5th overall pick. They could take up Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater or whoever they want with that 5th pick to help out that offensive line. But in my opinion, if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm addressing the offensive lineman in free agency. That way, at number 5 overall, you can get lucky and draft a Kyle Pitts that could completely change your offense, and therefore you give Joe Burrow one of the top offensive weapons in the NFL draft and give him one of the top linemen in NFL free agency. You get the best of both worlds. You help him out in giving him weapons, and you help him out giving him an extra second in the pocket. To me, obviously, you can go a different route and you could just get just Joe Thuney, and then you could get Penei Sewell, so you got a new guard and a new tackle for that offensive line, or you could address it all in free agency, like I said, and get Trent Williams or Brandon Scherff from Washington, or Joe Thuney from the New England Patriots. So you could do best of both worlds. It doesn't really matter. But to me, if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, I want to get it addressed in NFL free agency. That way, at number 5 overall, we could be looking at a weapon to help out Joe Burrow, either reuniting him with Jamar Chase from LSU or Kyle Pitts. I do think one of the two will be around at number 5 overall. I don't think that's a lot to ask. I doubt they'll have the option to pick either or. I do think one of those guys will go in the top 5, but at number 5, they should definitely get an extra weapon for Joe Burrow if they can pull off addressing the offensive line completely in free agency. But either way, if they go Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater, you can't go wrong with that in the draft. You can never have enough protection, especially for a guy who's coming off an injury and needs as much protection as he could get. So that, for me, is probably the top priority for the Cincinnati Bengals, is definitely protection. Get enough. I don't care if you have to get Joe Thuney, Trent Williams, and Penei Sewell, have the best offensive line in the NFL. That's fine, but just make sure it is addressed somehow, some way. Looking at the defense, not only, again, back to the offensive line, will that help out Joe Burrow, but Joe Mixon, he's been banged up. Giovanni Bernard is not the youngest anymore. The offensive line will help open the run game too, which will result in helping out Joe Burrow because he has a run game that he can rely on and isn't forced to throw the ball 45 times a game. So offensive line is going to help the entire offense, not just Burrow. Now, looking at the defensive side, I think they need to really address some backup in the secondary. I think Jesse Bates has a lot of potential. He's a great star, great safety in the NFL right now, and he's pretty young. He's only getting better. Von Bell has some talent. William Jackson's pretty young and has some talent. So there is some foundation there in the secondary, but I'd like to see a little bit more. Maybe Ronald Darby, the corner from the Washington football team. He's not the most lockdown corner in the NFL by any means, but the Bengals don't have the worst secondary in the NFL by any means. So that's why I'm just having them add an extra piece. Like I said, Ronald Darby from the Washington football team. He had some decent years with Washington, with the Eagles, and with Buffalo. Like I said, not locked down, but he's just going to a secondary that needs one extra piece to really complete them. Or look at other options such as A.J. Boye and so on and so forth. A lot of options. Or you could look at a safety from, like Anthony Harris from the Vikings. A lot of potential options for the secondary, but I definitely think you need to upgrade it. Of course, you want to help out the pass rush as well. I do think the Bengals will be considering highly to release Gino Atkins. He's pretty big cap hit. I think they'd save around $9 million if they released him, so they definitely have to consider that. And you can replace him with a guy that's looking for a solid paycheck. Maybe Von Miller is definitely going to leave the Broncos. You got Melvin Ingram, who's more than likely going to leave the Chargers, or you got Leonard Williams from the Giants. A lot of big defensive linemen, and even if you don't release Gino Atkins, get him some help and pair him up with one of those guys, and this defense could be very lethal if you add an extra corner and you add an extra pass rusher. This defense just definitely stepped up from a bottom half defense to a top half defense of the league. I didn't say top 5, I didn't say top 10, top half if you add them an extra corner and an extra good pass rusher. Have to be good ones though, of course. It can't just be any scrubs. I do think a couple additions, like I just said, in the secondary or the pass rush would definitely help out Joe Burrow in the long run, because his defense isn't giving up 30, 35 points a game. He's not forced to have to put up 40 points a game in order to win one. He could roll with a 21 or 28 point game and still get a win. And then, of course, like I said, address maybe Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase at number 5 overall. If you don't go that route, look at wide receiver in the free agency. I think Will Fuller, a speedy receiver from the Houston Texans, won't be the most expensive guy. You'll get a very fair price. You already have a solid receiving core in Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins. AJ Green and John Ross are going to be lost to free agency, which isn't a huge loss. John Ross has been injury prone. AJ Green doesn't seem motivated to play with the Bengals anymore, and they both cost money, and I'm just going to save Bengals money in the long run. Now, if AJ Green is turned back on, he's ready to play, and he wants to play for the Bengals, maybe consider it, but if he's anything like last season, let him walk and address it in free agency. Like I said, you already have T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Not a terrible foundation in the receiving core, but there's a lot of options. Like I said, a fair price on Will Fuller. I like Corey Davis from the Tennessee Titans. There's Kenny Gallaudet from the Detroit Lions. He might be looking for a paycheck, and he's tired of losing. He had talent, Matt Stafford. He might be looking for another big arm in Joe Burrow as well, and he might be able to help out that Bengals franchise. And then, of course, you got your big targets in NFL free agency, such as Chris Godwin and Allen Robinson. But I think Chris Godwin, one way or another, is either going to sign a long-term deal with the Bucs or get franchise tagged by the Bucs. And then Allen Robinson, I think he wants to go to a competitor. Not that the Bengals can't be a competitor in the long run, but they are definitely 2 to 3 years of building away from making the playoffs, in my opinion, especially in that division with the Browns, Ravens, and Steelers, who are all 3 playoff teams. Bengals are not ready yet with just one addition of Allen Robinson. So, final consensus and summary, what is top priority? Even though it's kind of boring, pass protection, offensive lineman in general is definitely the top priority for this Bengals team. You don't want to see your franchise guy constantly get beat up like Russell Wilson does with the Seahawks, like Carson Wentz did with the Eagles, like Andrew Luck did with the Colts, and, just bang him up and he loses some of his talent. Not that Russell Wilson lost his talent or Luck lost his talent, but it's making them tired of the game and making them have issues with their franchise. You want to protect Joe Burrow. I know it's early and he's not frustrated by any means yet, but you don't want to start a trend with this by any means. So to me, Joe Thuney, Brandon Scherff, Trent Williams, even if you scratch all 3 of those and don't get any of them, go for Penei Sewell in the NFL draft or Rashawn Slater, either or. Just make sure protection is addressed somewhere, preferably free agency from my standpoint, because I think 5th overall could be very well executed at Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts. That could take that offense to an entire another level. So if you sign say Trent Williams, or let's be realistic. I don't know if they'll be able to pull off Trent Williams and Brandon Scherff or Joe Thuney. I think you'll probably get one of those 3. So say they pull off Joe Thuney, and then at number 5 overall you get Jamar Chase, and then you also add Will Fuller, or maybe even another tight end such as Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith. This is a complete new offense that has a revamped run game with a healthy Joe Mixon, with a new O-line to open up holes and gaps. You got a protected Joe Burrow who has an extra split second in the pocket, and he has pretty solid receivers in T. Higgins, in Jamar Chase, in Tyler Boyd, and then on the defense you got, Gino Atkins and Melvin Ingram rushing in, along with the secondary being held down by Ronald Darby, Jesse Bates, Von Bell, and William Jackson. I know that's a lot to ask for, and that's going to be a lot of home runs hit by the Cincinnati Bengals, but it's definitely not impossible if they can manage contracts, if they can release the right guys, if they can restructure and execute their draft picks. I know this video is just about NFL free agency, but the draft is definitely where some of this potential talent is going to come for the Bengals in their future years. They got to execute all components of the offseason, even though the free agency comes first, and that'll determine a lot of how the draft goes. They definitely got to get protection, defense, and receiving core would probably be my last priority, just because you do have T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. I would address it, but you can always address it later. It's definitely not the top priority for me at this moment. Protection is number 1, hands down. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think protection is a top priority? Who should they go after in free agency? Who should they go after in the NFL draft? So on and so forth. Like I said, let me know down below in the comments. And for your question of the video, Cincinnati Bengals won the AFC Championship twice, in 1981 and 1988. Thanks for watching, guys. 2-minute warning.